The lights in the delivery room were harsh, buzzing above me in a way that made everything feel unreal. My body was weak, trembling from hours of labor, but the moment the nurse placed my baby in my arms, all of it seemed worth it. He was so small, so fragile, with tiny fists curling and uncurling against the blanket. I whispered his name, my lips brushing his forehead, and for a second, I felt whole. The exhaustion, the blood, the ache in every muscle, it didn't matter. I was holding my son, and in that instant, I believed I had everything I needed. The door opened behind me, and I expected relief. My husband would walk in, maybe tired, maybe overwhelmed, but ready to meet our child. Instead, the look on his face sent a chill through my spine. His eyes weren't soft or surprised, they were cold, almost furious. "Give him to me," he said flatly. I blinked, thinking I had misheard. My arms tightened instinctively around the baby. "What?" "No, he needs me right now. Please, just." He stepped forward in 2 quick strides. His hand reached out, grabbing the edge of the blanket with a force that made my heart lurch. I pulled back, cradling the baby tighter against my chest, but I was weak, my body still reeling from childbirth. His voice cut through the air, sharp and merciless. "You're nothing. Defole. Get out." For a second, I thought the room itself stopped. The machines hummed, the faint cries of other newborns echoed from distant hallways, but all I heard was the pounding in my ears. He yanked the baby from my arms, the sudden emptiness across my chest hitting harder than any pain I had felt during labor. I tried to push myself up from the bed, but my legs buckled. I was still bleeding, the sheets beneath me damp and heavy. "Please, he's our child," I begged, my voice shaking. "Don't do this." He didn't even look at me. He turned his back, cradling the baby like I was some stranger trying to steal what wasn't mine. Then, with one finger, he pointed to the door. His jaw tightened. "Leave. Now." My mind couldn't process it. I had imagined tears of joy, maybe nervous laughter, maybe even a fight about baby names. But this? Being ordered out of the room where I had just brought life into the world? My body sagged against the wall as I pulled myself up. Each step felt like tearing stitches. I clutched my hospital gown shut with one hand, the other pressed against the wall for balance. The corridor outside was blinding. Nurses passed, glancing at me, their faces stiff with the kind of discomfort that said they had seen too much and would rather not be involved. One slowed as if to help, then turned away. Another whispered something to a colleague, and I caught the words "family matter." No one stopped him. No one questioned why a woman, still pale and bleeding, was stumbling barefoot out of her own hospital room. I wanted to scream, to claw my way back inside, but my body was failing me. My knees trembled, my breath came in short, shallow gasps, and all I could do was lean against the cold wall and slide down to the floor. The sound of the door slamming echoed in my head, louder than the cries of my baby. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed the back of my hand against my mouth to muffle the sobs, because even in that moment, shame burned through me. Nurses, patients, strangers, I didn't want them to see me like this. I didn't want them to see the wife who had just been discarded, the mother who had been told she was nothing. But inside, questions raged louder than my grief. Why? Why would he take our child away from me? Was this planned? Had he waited for me to be at my weakest, to humiliate me at the very moment I should have been strongest? The hallway lights stretched endlessly, sterile and unfeeling, and I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. I pressed my forehead to my knees, rocking slightly, trying to steady my breathing, trying to force my body to hold together even as my world fell apart. It wasn't just the betrayal of being thrown out. It was the way he had looked at me, like I was less than human, like I was undeserving of the very child I had just carried and brought into this world. His words replayed, sharp and final, "You're nothing." And as much as I wanted to believe this was just a moment of anger, some outburst he would regret, deep down I knew it was more than that. This wasn't a crack in our marriage, it was something far darker. The question gnawed at me, louder than the pounding in my chest, louder than the buzzing lights overhead. Why would a man steal his newborn from the mother who had just given him life? The hospital discharged me faster than I thought possible. A nurse left a stack of papers on my bed, avoiding eye contact as she told me I was free to go. Free? The word felt like a mockery. My body was stitched and aching, my chest heavy with milk I couldn't give to the child who had been torn from me. I sat on a bench outside the hospital, the cold air biting into my skin. I hadn't even been allowed to dress properly, just a thin gown under a coat a kind stranger had draped over my shoulders. Every car that pulled up to the entrance made me flinch. Every sound of a baby crying sent knives through me. My mind replayed his face, my husband's face, as he pulled the baby away. The rage, the disgust. The question ate at me: why would he do this? The answer came in whispers. First from a friend who called and said she'd heard a story already spreading, that I had lost my mind during delivery, that I had refused to hold the baby, screamed, tried to run. Lies. Carefully planted lies. My husband hadn't just stolen my child, he was rewriting the story of who I was. I went back to our house, my legs weak as I walked up the familiar steps. The lights were on inside. Through the window I could see him, cradling the baby in his arms. He looked calm, even gentle, the picture of a devoted father. And when his eyes flicked up and caught mine through the glass, there was no shame, only triumph. I banged on the door, my voice hoarse. "Let me in. He's my son too." The door opened a crack, just enough for his voice to slide through. "You don't live here anymore." The words slammed harder than the door had the night before. I begged, I pleaded, I pressed my palms against the wood until they ached. Neighbors' curtains shifted as faces peeked out. But no one came to help. By morning, my mother's old friend, Lena, showed up at the small apartment I had retreated to. She brought groceries, tissues, and the kind of silence that allows a person to cry without judgment. She listened as I told her everything, every detail, her face tightening as she pieced the puzzle together. "This wasn't sudden," she finally said. "He's been preparing this." Her words made my stomach clench. Preparing. That explained the careful lies, the sudden coldness in his eyes months before the birth, the strange absences he never explained. I had ignored the signs, thinking stress or work had changed him. But now I saw it clearly. He had been building a trap, waiting until I was weakest. "Why?" I whispered, almost too afraid to hear the answer. Lena leaned closer, her voice low. "Because if he convinces everyone you're unfit, he keeps everything, your child, your home, your future. And you? You disappear." I shook my head, refusing to believe the man I once trusted could be so calculated. But the evidence was mounting. He had stolen not only my son but also the narrative of my life. To the world, I was the unstable mother who abandoned her baby. He had taken my motherhood and turned it into a weapon. That night I lay awake, the empty silence of the apartment pressing against me. My body still bore the marks of birth, but my arms were empty. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the weight of my baby, the tiny warmth against my chest. Every memory felt like it was slipping away, as if my husband's lies were stronger than my own truth. But one thought kept me alive: I would not let him erase me. The bigger question began to form in my mind, a question that both terrified and fueled me. How do you fight for your child when the person you're fighting is the one who was supposed to be your partner, and when the world already believes his lies? The first step in fighting back was to stop crying long enough to think. Days blurred together in the small apartment Lena had helped me find. My body healed slowly, but my mind felt raw, like every thought scraped against an open wound. Still, I forced myself to get out of bed, to eat, to write. I started keeping notes, everything I remembered from the night he took my baby, every word he said, every nurse who looked away. If he was rewriting my story, I would write my own version too. But paperwork and memories weren't enough. I needed proof. So, I went back to the hospital. Walking through those doors felt like walking into fire, but I pushed myself forward. At the desk, I asked for my medical records, for the reports from that night. The clerk's polite smile faltered when she pulled up my file. Her eyes flickered, hesitant. She told me I could have copies but that certain notes were confidential. I insisted. When the papers came, I scanned the pages with shaking hands. My stomach dropped. In black ink, underlined, were words I had never spoken. Patient refused to hold newborn. Patient agitated. Possible postpartum psychosis. I nearly tore the paper in half. Lies, written into my medical history. My husband had reached this far? He hadn't just convinced neighbors, he had convinced doctors. Or bribed them. Or both. I stumbled out of the hospital, clutching the papers. On the street outside, cars passed, people laughed. Life moved on as if the ground beneath me hadn't just collapsed. If he had corrupted the official record, then my word meant nothing. I wasn't just fighting him, I was fighting a system already tilted in his favor. That night Lena held my hand as I cried. "This is bigger than you thought," she said softly. "He's not just a cruel man. He's a strategist. He's making sure every door closes on you." Her words made me realize something I had been avoiding. This wasn't just about custody. It was about erasure. He wanted me gone completely, not just from my child's life but from the story itself. I began searching for lawyers. Most turned me away after hearing the words psychosis in my medical file. One even told me gently, "It will be nearly impossible for you to win custody if that's in your record." Each rejection tightened the noose around me. One evening, desperate, I returned to the house. I stood across the street, watching through the window. He was there, rocking the baby, humming softly. But then his phone rang. His posture changed. He turned away from the crib, pacing, his voice sharp. I couldn't hear everything, but one phrase carried across the quiet street: "No one can know." My chest clenched. No one can know. What? I ducked into the shadows as he closed the blinds. My hands shook, my breath coming fast. Whatever secret he was hiding, it was the reason behind everything. Later that week, Lena encouraged me to speak to one more lawyer, a woman known for taking impossible cases. I sat in her office, the papers trembling in my lap. She read in silence, her eyes sharp. Then she leaned back. "If these notes were falsified, there has to be a trail. Payments. Signatures. Inconsistencies." Her words sparked something inside me. For the first time, I saw a path, not a guarantee, but a possibility. If I could prove he had manufactured the lie, then maybe I could reclaim my truth. But as I left her office, a chill ran through me. If he had gone this far already, what else was he capable of? And how much darker would things get if I dug too deep? That night, staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, I whispered to myself, "He's hiding something bigger than me. Bigger than custody. If I find it, I'll understand why he destroyed me." The thought terrified me as much as it gave me hope. The hook was clear, pounding in my chest. What secret was my husband so desperate to bury that he would destroy his own wife to keep it hidden? The day I finally uncovered the truth didn't feel like victory at first, it felt like drowning. The lawyer I had met with, Ms. Harris, had taken my case. 4 weeks we gathered fragments, bills, hospital statements, witness accounts. Every late-night phone call from her made my heart race with both dread and hope. One evening, she called me in. Her office smelled of coffee and paper, a fortress of files piled high. She slid a document across the desk. "I think we found it." I leaned forward. The paper trembled under my fingers as I read. It was a financial transfer, large sums paid from my husband's account to a physician at the hospital. The date matched the night of my delivery. Next to it, a signed note marked "Patient unstable." My stomach twisted. It was proof. He had bribed the doctor to brand me unfit. But it wasn't just about custody. Ms. Harris's voice was steady as she explained. "He wasn't trying to protect the child from you. He was trying to protect himself. If you had custody, you'd have access to documents, to financial records. He couldn't risk that." I frowned, my heart pounding. "What records?" She met my eyes. "His laundering money. Using shell companies. And if you had any legal claim as the child's mother, you could expose him. That's why he cut you out so brutally. The room swayed. Betrayal burned through me, deeper than before. He hadn't taken my baby because he thought I was weak. He had done it because he knew I was strong. Because he knew, if given the chance, I would find the truth. That night I walked home in the dark, my coat pulled tight against the wind. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I thought of the way he had ripped the baby from my arms, the way he had spat the word nothing at me. All this time, I had believed maybe I was too fragile, too broken. But the truth was the opposite. He was terrified of me. I stayed up all night writing. Every memory, every suspicious absence, every late-night phone call I had ignored while pregnant. Lena sat beside me, keeping me awake with endless cups of tea. By morning, we had a timeline, a story that finally made sense. The hearing came weeks later. I sat in the courtroom, my hands shaking, while my husband stood across from me in a sharp suit, calm and confident. He still looked at me like I was a nuisance, something beneath him. His lawyer painted me as unstable, repeating the same words from the falsified medical notes. I clenched my fists under the table, waiting. Ms. Harris remained composed, flipping calmly through her files until it was our turn. Then she stood, her voice steady. "We have evidence that these records were purchased. Evidence of financial misconduct tied directly to the plaintiff." Gasps rippled through the courtroom as she displayed the documents, page after page. Transfers. Emails. Signatures. My husband's mask cracked. His eyes darted, his jaw tightened. For the first time since that night at the hospital, he looked afraid. The judge's face was stern, unreadable. "These are serious accusations. An investigation will be required." I didn't win full custody that day. The process would take longer. But I won something more important. I shattered his control. His lies no longer stood unchallenged. His secret was out, and the walls he had built around himself were starting to crumble. After the hearing, he brushed past me in the hallway, his voice a hiss. "You'll regret this." But for once, I didn't flinch. I met his eyes and said quietly, "No. You will." Walking out of that building, the air felt different. Lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Lena hugged me at the bottom of the steps, her voice breaking. "You did it, Lisa. You didn't disappear. You fought back." We both cried, but these tears were different. They weren't just grief, they were release. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild. It wasn't easy. My child was still with him, and the legal battle stretched ahead of me like a mountain. But I had proof now. I had allies. And most of all, I had my voice again. At night, I would sit by the window, writing letters to my son. I told him about the day he was born, about how I had held him for a moment before everything was ripped away. I promised him that no matter how long it took, I would fight for him. And when he was old enough, he would know the truth, not the lies his father spun, but the truth written in my own hand. The betrayal had broken me open, but inside that fracture I found something unexpected: resolve. The woman who had left the hospital bleeding, humiliated, and discarded was gone. In her place stood someone who knew how much she could endure, and how much she was willing to fight. The battle wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid of him. His power came from silence, and I refused to be silent any longer. As I stood one evening on the balcony of my small apartment, the city lights stretching far into the distance, I whispered to myself, "He thought he ended me. But this is where I begin." The story wasn't finished. But I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a mother, a fighter, and a woman reborn. And the question that carried me forward, stronger than fear, was this: if he was willing to destroy me to hide his secrets, what else was he hiding that the world deserved to know?